Emma Carter stood in the quiet of her childhood home, the silence deafening. Just 2 days after her father's wedding, she'd woken to find the house empty. Her father, David Carter, his new wife, Sarah, and Sarah's 2 daughters gone without a word. Their belongings were still scattered across the spare rooms, but they'd vanished, leaving Emma, the legal owner of the house, stunned and betrayed. At 22, she'd inherited this place from her mother, who passed away last year, and now, after letting her father's family stay for the wedding, she was grappling with what came next. When she finally reached Sarah by phone, the woman's rudeness pushed Emma to a breaking point. She packed their things, changed the locks, and vowed to protect her home and her heart. The house in question was Emma's sanctuary, left to her by her mother, who died at 47 from a stroke. It was sudden, but Emma had made peace with it. Her parents had divorced when she was 7, splitting custody. She'd spend half the month with her father, David, now 50, and half with her mother. Emma was always closer to her mother, who truly understood her. David, on the other hand, was perpetually distracted. Work or women always came first. She never felt like his priority, but her mother's love made it bearable. A couple of years ago, when Emma turned 18 and started college, David moved to Houston for work. Their contact dwindled to holiday visits. 2 years back, during Christmas, David surprised Emma and her mother by bringing his girlfriend, Sarah, 38, and her daughters, Lily, 18, and Shelley, 16, from a previous relationship. Hello. Thanks for watching and being part of this journey. If you enjoy story like this, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support means the world. Now let's dive into the story. Sarah had never married her high school boyfriend, the girl's father, and had split with him 7 years before meeting David. It was the first time David brought a partner to a family gathering, but Emma and her mother welcomed them warmly, ensuring Sarah and her kids felt at ease. The evening went well. Everyone got along. After that, Sarah was always sweet during phone calls with Emma, saying hi when she spoke to David. Lily and Shelley were shy, keeping to themselves, but the relationship felt positive overall. When Emma's mother passed, she learned the house was hers. Her mother had updated her will around Emma's 18th birthday, a foresight Emma now cherished. Freshly graduated, Emma moved in, wanting to stay in her place of comfort while starting her career. David wasn't thrilled about the will. He and Sarah were supportive during the funeral, but Emma sensed his frustration when he realized the house wasn't his. It was the same house he and her mother bought when they married, but her mother took it in the divorce settlement. A fair trade, Emma thought, since her mother gave up her career to raise her, sparing David alimony. Her mother later rebuilt her life with help from her parents, ensuring Emma never felt neglected. David got her mother's wedding jewelry and gifts in the will, but the house clearly stung him. He didn't dwell on it openly, but his mood spoke volumes. Emma, grieving, didn't care much then. David and Sarah returned to Houston weeks after the funeral, and Emma lived alone. 6 months ago, David announced his engagement to Sarah. He wanted to marry in his hometown and stay at Emma's house beforehand, arguing hotels were unnecessary when there were spare rooms. Sarah's daughters were homeschooled, so logistics was simple. Emma agreed, partly because she was tired of solitude and got along with Sarah. David promised to split bills, easing her financial strain. They moved in a month ago, and Emma found comfort in their presence. The loneliness that had haunted her lifted, and she dreaded the departure after the wedding, fearing a return to her solitary routine. 2 weeks ago, 3 days before the wedding, David sat her down. He asked if they could move in permanently, explaining he'd returned to make her comfortable with the idea of a blended family. He didn't like her living alone and thought she was adjusting well. Emma wanted to say yes. Loneliness made the idea tempting, but memories of David's annoyance over the will gave her pause. Acting on emotion felt risky. Though living with them seemed logical, she told him she needed time to think, promising a decision after the wedding. David looked annoyed but didn't push. 10 days ago, they married, and the wedding was a blast. Emma planned to approve their permanent stay, expecting them to linger a few days post-wedding. But 2 days after, she woke to an empty house. Panicked, she called repeatedly with no answer. Around noon, Sarah finally responded, casually saying they'd left for their honeymoon and would be back in a week. Emma was stunned. They hadn't told her, let alone invited her. Trying not to sound petty, she asked why no one informed her. Sarah gave a flimsy excuse about forgetting but said not to worry, they'd return soon. That's not the point, Emma said. Leaving without a word or goodbye was rude. She asked to speak to David, but Sarah's tone shifted. She said David was busy and unavailable. Emma, keeping her cool, asked Sarah to let her know when he had time. But Sarah snapped, calling Emma hysterical for feeling left behind, reminding her she wasn't a child. Your dad has a new family now, Sarah said. Make peace with it. And when we're back, have the house clean for us. Furious, Emma realized Sarah's true colors. She was grateful she hadn't agreed to David's plan. She packed their belongings haphazardly into cardboard boxes, left them in the yard, and changed the locks. She didn't care what happened to their stuff. It didn't belong in her house. Life resumed, and she tried not to dwell on the betrayal. Yesterday, they returned from their honeymoon while Emma was at work. David was livid, calling her a brat for overreacting to their minor oversight. She told him to take their boxes and leave, threatening police action if they lingered. He cursed and hung up. When Emma got home, their things were gone. She thought it was over, but at midnight, David called, saying Sarah wanted to speak. Sarah apologized, claiming she didn't mean her harsh words and wanted to make amends. Emma wasn't fooled. Leave me alone, she said. I don't need your fake apologies. David then tried guilt, saying he'd split bills if she let them move in. He claimed the house reminded him of her mother, and refusing them was selfish. He said Sarah was just in a bad mood that day, and her daughters missed Emma. But Emma saw through it. David had always coveted the house since the divorce. When she held firm, he sobbed, calling her the most selfish daughter for denying him a home tied to his happiest memories over a silly disagreement, and not being invited on the honeymoon. Emma stood her ground, knowing her mother would have supported her. She'd rather be alone than manipulated. Update 1. Comments online were a wake-up call, some harsh, but Emma got the point. She stuck to her decision, refusing David's return. He'd been awful, and she didn't need more of it. Initially, David and Sarah were sweet, but when Emma asked for time to think, their true selves emerged. They likely thought they could bully her into compliance, but she wasn't weak. Letting them stay was a mistake. David's reaction to the will should have warned her of his materialism. Sarah's outburst sealed it. Emma was glad it ruined their plans. Had Sarah stayed kind, they might have been a family, but Emma wouldn't fall for their act again. Loneliness stung. She missed her mom, and her grandparents were gone. But David's family wasn't the answer. David kept calling and texting, pleading for another chance, but Emma ignored him. He'd never prioritized her, so she wouldn't base her life on his feelings. You reap what you sow. Update 2. David wasn't just persistent, he was desperate. Emma learned he hadn't taken a work break as claimed. He'd been fired months ago, before the wedding. He'd lived off savings, now depleted after an extravagant wedding and honeymoon. He told Sarah they couldn't afford Houston's rent, and with Sarah jobless as a stay-at-home mom, they needed Emma's house. Sarah only apologized after learning the truth, confirming her insincerity. David asked to stay a few days until he found work, but Emma refused. Their nastiness wasn't her burden. David knew his responsibilities but splurged anyway. A lavish wedding wasn't for men with no job and 2 stepdaughters. Emma texted him politely, saying it wasn't her problem, but he took it as mockery, threatening she'd suffer. She didn't respond, letting him stew. It wasn't her issue anymore. Update 3. David left the city today, true to form, not without drama. He and Sarah texted Emma, gloating that Sarah's ex-boyfriend was funding their return to Houston and letting them stay with him, supposedly to reconnect with his daughters, Lily and Shelley. Sarah had full custody, and the ex paid child support but was too busy for his kids until now. Emma suspected he stepped in after David and Sarah floundered. They posted a photo of the girls with a "Lucky Charms" caption, hinting at the deal. Emma didn't know the details. Maybe Sarah's manipulation played a role, given her past behavior, but she was relieved they were gone. Compared to others' family dramas online, Emma felt she dodged worse. David cared too much about his reputation to harm her, and with self-defense training, she wasn't worried. Loneliness lingered, but instead of dwelling, she turned to friends. After her mother's death, she'd isolated herself, not realizing how alone she'd become until feedback online opened her eyes. With a stable job, decent income, and her own house, rare for her age, Emma was grateful to her mom. She had caring friends, and that was enough. If trouble arose, she'd seek advice online again.